welcome back to another episode of The Art of Sales, an interactive series from Zipteams on sales enablement, where we bring together some of the top sales leaders in the industry to share their insights and experiences with you. For this episode, it is my absolute pleasure to interact with Mr. Harichandra Nair, partner and global business head at ZenQ, a software quality assurance leader. Thank you so much for joining us today and this initiative, Harichandra. And we'd love to know a little bit about you and your work at ZenQ.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanya, for having me. First off, really appreciate you taking the time off. I must say that you've taken care of the diligent stuff behind the entire video that we're doing right now of introducing me to myself, by and large, as to what exactly I'm expecting out of this. So to speak about myself, my name is Harichandra Nair. Please feel free to call me Hari. I oversee the sales and client partnership efforts along with solution selling within ZenQ, which is Zen Quality Assurance Private Limited. Erstwhile ZenQ, rather, as you'd probably have figured it out already. We are part of a much bigger firm right now. In terms of the journey so far, in the month of November, I completed 6 years within this firm, primarily taking care of global sales for the last 2.5 to 3 years. But before that, it was largely bifurcated between respective geosets that I had ventured upon, which included North America, UK, Europe, mainland Europe, as well as UK, and then moving on to the entire globe. Primarily a pure play testing services company, an independent pure play testing services company is what ZenQ is, or erstwhile the company name, that is. ZenQ has been up and around for just about 17 plus years. It's one of the renowned firms, at least within the ITES sector, not just in southern India, but by and large the realm of Indian IT services. That's my journey been so far. It was really rewarding. It has been very enthralling, very challenging as equally. Before that, I've had a few stints in 2 to 3 companies, namely Oracle, HSBC, and another services company just before ZenQ.
All right, that's amazing. So ZenQ has always championed customer-centric engineering capabilities and assures the quality of your clients' deployments and their overall operational readiness. So you recently got acquired, and how has that been working out for you? How was the past year in terms of business? And how do you see the next year shaping up for you?
Okay. If I had to really sum it up in one single word, it's just been absolutely enthralling, followed by respective traits that I could call it as inviting of knowledge, a lot of learning, being a part of a slightly bigger firm. I would say, quote unquote, a little more than slightly bigger firm, where our services do align, the overall thought processes and the cultures do align, primarily being a company, being a testing services firm, and as well as getting acquired by a company which pretty much deals in the same realm of offerings. It has been something spectacular. The last 1 year, a lot of challenges, no doubt, not just for us, but by and large for the entire globe. The last 2.5 years, I would quote it under the bracket of the difficult times. We did have quite a bit of humbling experiences, quite a bit of learning in terms of where the business shifts are, whether it is shift left or shift right. Funnily enough, all those learnings, all those understandings, and all those humbling experiences only yielded much more beneficial ancillary victories for us. Ancillary, I'm not saying particularly with regards to revenue, but ancillary in terms of the larger spectrum, India being widely recognized as a go-to place, not just for the pivotal geographies of North America, UK, Europe, but by and large all the other geographies. We have become the formidable talent pool, not just for companies within India, but overall or across the globe. Apart from the fact that the concept of cost arbitrage is no longer there, we're primarily coming with the arbitrage of value. Because about 25 years back, when the so-called .com boom happened, we were largely a cost arbitrage place. But the fact that in the last 2.5 years, we have seen that it's just not the cost, but it's also the value that we're bringing onto the table. And that is what the biggest learning has been, which, of course, coupled with multiple other reasons. Probably, if I have to largely put it in 2 to 3 bullet points, these would be the ones.
All right. Like you mentioned, obviously, the past 2 years was something not less than a whirlwind. And the last year, especially so, because we are finally coming back to in office and just getting back to business in whole. So, like you said, it's been quite an iterative process. So, any specific business procedural changes or certain methodology changes that happened within your own teams, your sales teams across the board?
Oh, quite a bit, quite a bit. One thing that we both, or rather, the entire spectrum of your audience need to understand is that, the conventional way of selling is no longer existent. It's just passé right now. Pardon me. I don't remember a year where I have stayed put at one place for more than 1 month at a time. For the last 2.5 years, though it's been an absolute boon for me, but in terms of business, it was an absolute learning that travel or in-person connects was necessarily not the reason why we were able to sell. We all came to an understanding that it was largely driven by two major factors. One, customers were always buying because they had a need. You can be the greatest salesperson in this world with the best gift of the gab, but the fact of the matter is you can't really sell unless the customer has a need, or they do have a need, but they don't know it yourself, but you were smart enough to identify that, which paves way for the current times as well as the future. So one of the learnings that I did, which it was an absolute whirlwind, as you rightly said, as an eye-opener basically, was we can sell sitting wherever that we are. So one of the business processes change that we did was cutting down on a lot of the so-called conventional ways of expenditures, operational expenses, and trying to create much more CapEx sort of investments with regards to learning, with regards to processes, where the sales team were not just trained for the business aspects of it, but also periodically and categorically change for the newer trends. And that's where the technology learning were brought in. So one of the business processes that we had to introduce was everybody had to go through an ardent form of training for all the new next-gen technologies that's up and brewing in the world, apart from the fact that we were also pardon me, apart from the fact that, by and large, keeping the learning aside, we were also in general supposed to enhance our skill set for keeping the forthright future in mind. So our company started the work on AI, ML much longer than the other companies would potentially may have. So the name OpenAI, ChatGPT, working on it, or at least getting trained on it 3 to 4 years back, more or less when the news of a bio issue would actually surface. So that is one of the things. So in terms of business processes and changes, learning has taken precedence over operational expense. So basically CapEx is what I would say, apart from the fact that learning in-person meetings is no longer existent. So we are not really focusing on that. We're rather focusing on how to increase our skill sets, whether or not we are selling online.
All right. Like you mentioned, there have been a lot of learnings, etc., and there have been a lot of programs where your teams have been upskilled, etc., with the new technologies that are coming in. So, as a tech giant yourself, how does the sales team at ZenQ work in concurrence with other teams? And what factors do you take into account while assessing performance and success?
Okay. So there are multiple teams. I've always believed that a salesperson just cannot be a lone ranger. Any salesperson would only go so far with regards to the way he or she is selling. So while we can bring in the nascent amount of technical knowledge, specifically when you're talking about ITES services or solution sales. So I probably may not have ever dealt with real-time delivery. So there's only so much that I would know. So it has to be a coupled affair with respective teams coming into picture. Now, how do you go about having teams bifurcated? It could be one after another subsequent form of play, or at the same time concurrent form of play. I've always believed that a close-knit team always functions better. So you need to understand as to how would you like to divide your team. So if I'm going to the market, it has to be coupled with a thorough research preparedness coming from the pre-sales team, coming from the prior marketing team, the PR team, along with the information that we have to understand as to what all areas is our end customer involved with, what all are their pain areas. Again, as I said, they may have pain areas, but they don't know it yet. That is when the forthright future preparedness also comes into picture. Currently, they probably may be on legacy platforms. How would we go about modernizing it, transformation, quality engineering, all of that comes into play. So yes, having concurrent teams and keeping every single team informed about our respective KRAs, OKRs is very, very important. You cannot really be working in a silo unless you are, to quote unquote, let's take some example, Tata's, Wipros of the world, where you have respective business units. And within those business units, you have multiple factors playing, multiple resources, multiple people playing in. But for a small to medium business, let's say anything from 500 all the way up to 5,000 people firm, which is not a very small firm by and large, it's still relatively a big firm. You need to understand that it has to be a close-knit function together. Yes, we also do have respective patterns, respective weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, and most importantly, quarterly audits where we track the employee performance individually. At the same time, a cohesive performance of the overall team based on parameters. Parameters could be varied. For a company like ours, or company like anybody, in fact, parameters could be top line, bottom line to begin with, as to what is the top line of selling, that is my team and my team involvement. At the same time, as to bottom line, where the delivery or the technical team is actually able to deliver what we have been able to sell. Right. Apart from this, the other concurrent teams that will really come into play is the overall growth team. So the factor of growth, or as we call it, the new business growth, that is where we need to put in a lot of focus, a lot of energy, because knowing that, AI is going to be the major play in 2023, how would we be aligning ourselves with the new business team, the growth team, so that they are prepared that if and when a lead comes from the business development team, I would be able to take that particular person from NB and make that one meeting the end meeting. If we are able to get that, this is going to be the icing on the cake, where we're not supposed to have multiple meetings. With one meeting or one call, we are able to seal the deal off. So parameters could be many. As I said, top line, bottom line, parameters could be learning, parameter could be future, the next gen technologies, parameters could be really drilling it down into understanding what is the expenditure, what is the return on investment. Multiple things are there. Do we actually track it? Yes, there are multiple tools that we use internally. Probably, there's no point in sharing the names in particular, but yes, there are some renowned tools that we use to track employee performance, parameters that we do tend to work upon for the OKRs as well as KRAs. Initiatives. One of the questions that you asked me was in terms of initiatives. Yes, there are multiple initiatives, largely driven and hovering around the concept of learning, because I think there's no better investment that anybody could do, whether it is the technical side or the business side, other than learning. So if we are able to learn whatever that we are supposed to take upon ourselves, not just for the current time, but also for the next 4 to 6 quarters, I think that is what we like to indulge ourselves into.
Perfect. So like you've been mentioning, there have been various initiatives on learning. We quite know it all the more that sales enablement or enablement as a whole has become a really major focus as of last year, and it's going to be a major focus going into the next year as well. So have you been experimenting with certain sales enablement stacks or technologies, or have you been using such technologies? How has that been working out for your teams?
Oh, I mean, plenty. Where do I begin? So let me give you a small graph of the last half a decade. About 5 years back, the so-called, or let's say 6 years back, the concept of IoT, which sort of started becoming prevalent. You need to understand that from the first time that a particular arena is touched upon, be it IoT, be it blockchain, to the first time that those projects are outsourced, there's a big time interval gap. It could be for multiple reasons, for regulatory reasons, for information security reasons and whatnot. So I remember about 2014, 15, the previous firm that I was working with, the concept IoT came into picture, prevalent. The concept OTT, EPG. So, and that is one of the key areas that I've always been interested with. I have personally been involved in multiple product launches as well. By the time they actually came to India, it was already 2017, 2018. That is where the advent of Prime or Netflix and all pretty much happened. Same way, let's say if we were to speak about blockchain. Blockchain, the quote unquote word was initially uttered probably in Money 2020, back in 2018, the event that we have, Money 2020, the BFSI event that is held every year in 2018. But by the time the product or the thought process was reasonably in a sound enough state to get outsourced, only happened after the pandemic. Yes. Was it because the technology was mature? Not necessarily. It was driven through a multiple reasoning factor. One is the lack of resources. One is the pool of resources, the abundance, basically. At the same time, also driven by cost. Multiple factors do happen. So the question that you asked is in terms of would ZenQ or any other company, not just ZenQ, if I was to quote any other company, would they invest? Yes, there are quite a few technologies. To begin with, I would like to quote blockchain. Blockchain is taking a lot of prevalence in most of the customers that we speak with, because blockchain is a new technology which is not limited to one particular vertical or sub-vertical domain or subdomain. It is pretty much prevalent and it can be adopted into all of it. While it started from the premise of BFSI, it's pretty much everywhere now. So that is one of the areas that we are heavily investing upon, followed by next-gen technologies like phygital. Nowadays, a lot of our customers who come through to us, they do have physical products. At the same time, they have a digital presence. So the perfect influx or the congress of phygital technologies is something that we are working with, because that is important, where we not just provide software development, software testing related work, we are also able to understand customers' physical presence at respective domains, whether it is utilities industry, whether it is an aviation industry, or whether even it is, healthcare tech industry. So digital would be second, then followed by the standard technologies, which I would like to call IoT, OTT, which is over the top technologies like such sort. Enabling your teams with, yes, we have to ensure that, we just do not hand out a certain document or a flyer to our salesperson and go and speak to Comcast to try and get an OTT driven deal. We would not be able to do that. One of the best ways is to try and start humble, start small, try and take up certain projects in-house where we are investing a bit of money, where we actually have the technical team give a formidable training to the sales guys as to what exactly is a VOD or EPG or whatever. Then we try and understand the overall stack that goes behind it, the thought process that behind it, the streaming patterns that go behind it. And then we get to know that this is an overall end-to-end OTT package, knowing that we are not getting into the market as a product company, but we are taking that as a solution and then going to bigger players like Time Warner or T-Mobile or Comcast or Charter, and then putting across the experience that we have this. So real-time enablement is nothing but you actually show it to the salesperson as to how do we do. Same goes with blockchain, AI, and other aspects where any existing projects that you have got, you have periodic trainings done for the sales guys. Enablement in terms of real-time training is something that we're looking for. And through that, the person is enabled enough to go and actually start up a conversation. Please note, a salesperson may not be necessarily required to spring up a conversation for 1 hour when it comes to AI. All that the person needs to know is understand where exactly is the customer coming from, understand their pain area, and then reconfirm or reaffirm the fact that whether or not this is something that we could do. Once we can confirm it with a sound judgment, we get it back to our technical team and they run the show from there. So this is certain kind of enablement, but technologies, yes, I'm fairly excited about AI, blockchain, digital.
All right. Any specific technology for your sales teams that you've experimented with lately, or are you still looking over that horizon?
So we have. So when it comes to the technologies or tools per se, which probably would be relevant to the sales guy, yes, there are multiple technologies or tools that we have used, enablements rather. Nascent enablements, of course, would be companies like ZoomInfo that we have used. I have also used in the past. One of the companies that we have worked with as well as used in my past is a company called Outreach.io, which I suppose is one of your competitors. So yes, this is some of the enablers pertaining to sales and their day-to-day work. But apart from that, technology as it stands, I think it's not, sales work is essentially not rocket science. You can have the greatest of tools out there for the salesperson, but the fact is, as long as the customer would want to have something sorted at their end, we are good to go.
I think you very beautifully explained how no matter how many technology stacks that you have, at the end of the day, sales is really about pure human conversations. You will always need that human aspect to sales. So I see that you have a really amazingly grounded initiatives when it comes to enabling salespeople, not just with technologies, but actually building that cross collaborative work environment with your salespeople as well. So going ahead, now that we are into Q1 of 2023, what are your critical focus areas for this year? Any specific targets that you're focusing on? How are you going about that?
Sure. So we generally tend to follow the fiscal, but let's take the example of a Gregorian calendar, which is a calendar year. So January comes with a lot of changes. Number one, the openness of the market. This is one of the latest trend. I should not be calling it a trend, but then the fact is it is a trend that, the customers are opening up, the market is opening up. Also coupled with some not so perfect news of certain economies, I quote, going down. What we need to understand is, number one, what are your primary key areas, key markets to work upon? Predominantly for services as well as product-based companies, North America happens to be the largest play within North America, US in particular. Now the time has come where we try and diversify. Not that companies aren't doing it as of yet, they are, but I think now they need to focus. They need to de-risk multiple things considering the market scenarios that we have got. This is with regards to the geography. That is the first set of understanding. Second, we need to understand what is the larger pattern, because there comes a stage in every company's existence where we try and understand what deals or what work are we supposed to get to. Yes, bigger the companies, the bigger the deals that they play with. Smaller the companies, smaller deals that they play with. But I suppose we have reached a stage where we try and understand. We just do not want to be yet another outsourcing partner for their solutions or their services. What we want to do is we want to partner for their overall digital transformation, quality engineering, data modernization, all these kind of shift left approaches, something which of course would require a fair amount of investment, but over the longer course of run will poise them for the next future. Now, how do I motivate myself and the team? Again, one of the classiest or simplest answer that I could provide is the adrenal. So this is one of the teams. I think any salesperson would have the adrenal to win any account, immaterial of the deal size, immaterial of the customer, any account being one. Forget the monetary side of commissions and whatnot. The fact that, we were able to understand the customer's pain in a world full of options, we were able to garner the customer's interest and we were able to win the deal is something that should be creating adrenaline in ourselves automatically, as opposed to us motivating. Yet every once in a while, when we were doing this, when you've been dealing with MSAs, POs, and SOWs for about close to 2 decades, it becomes important that, once in a while you do get a pat on the back. So motivation can be driven through numbers. Motivation can be driven through MBOs. MBO as imagined by objectives. Then, of course, it could be driven through growth. It could be driven in terms of role change. It could be driven in terms of title change. It could be driven in terms of overall learning. Multiple things are there. But yes, trends, market scenarios. Number one, careful geography approach. Number two, trends, the newer trends approach. And number three, falling back onto basics of transformation, modernization. The second point that I spoke, trends, as I said, it could be blockchain, IoT, AI. And if you are really focusing on some of the newer technologies, I think you are fairly poised for the next decade.
All right. So this was another question that we were initially going to, cover towards the end. But now that you've actually talked about motivations and how you motivate yourself, have you sort of rolled out any specific initiatives, any motivational or any internal recognition programs or anything like that within your sales team or any other teams that you've seen have worked out really well? Because as we've come to understand, it's just not purely about numbers. It also comes to recognition, like I said, title changes, etc. So any specifics on that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So there are multiple initiatives that gets happened at an overall org level at the same time within the team. Within the team, it could just be me taking my team members out for a quick lunch and trying to have a team outing somewhere, probably at a hotel, at a resort, where we just try and spend a day worth of organizational discussions, be it numbers, be it past as well as the future. At the same time, it could be as nascent and simple as a spot award for the splendid amount of work that they have done by winning one specific account. Need not be a big ticket value, but a specific account which brings in a newer area of understanding. The first blockchain deal that we closed was a relatively smaller deal, but that really helped us get onboarded in terms of that technology and then prevail further. So yes, awards, periodic, quarterly, as well as half-yearly updates in terms of numbers, and assessment of the resources aspirations is something that we help with. So in our company, there are multiple ways that somebody can grow up the ladder. The business development people can actually move into technology. The technology people can actually move into sales, because again, I'm saying this considering the size of our company. So there are internal movements possible, but more than that, we try and understand the aspirations in terms of what is it that they would like to achieve. Some people are fairly clear that they want to solve customers' issues. They want to be a hunter. So that could be a role. Somebody says that I just want to continue growing an account and just be a client partner. So that could be one. Spot awards, which are monetary in nature, as well as spot awards could be rewarding, not just for themselves, but even for the family, could be another nature. So there are multiple things that we do. It's an amalgamation of plenty of things. Like pretty much every other company does.
All right. So I think we've talked shop quite enough. So tell us, how did you end up choosing sales as a career, and how has it shaped you? Any specific thumb rules or philosophies that you swear by?
Sure. So this is a lengthy answer. I don't know what sort of time do you have, but I come from a not so famous metropolitan named Nagpur. So Nagpur is in Maharashtra. I think Maharashtra was only famous for oranges. I always thought that I would probably leave Nagpur and go someplace else, not just within India but overseas. So one of the primary goals that I always had in my life was to travel. This is something, and I think this is an answer that you may have heard, Sanya, from multiple people. So traveling was a real interest for me because I was an NCC cadet as well. So I used to travel quite a bit over there too. That, coupled with the fact some alchemy of things and career took us there, the fact that I could speak, the fact that I could actually sell, really got me into frontline sales. But once I did get there, one of the questions that actually you just asked me, how has it shaped me? Needless to say, like any early 20s guy, I was fairly non-pragmatic. I was slightly impatient. I was enthusiastic, but impatient. Considering all of that, I think if I had to put one trait that has really gotten into me over the last 15 plus years doing this, what I'm doing is a lot of empathy. I think this is something that I have. Empathy coupled with other factors as well, be it a determination to help our customers, dedication on doing something day in and day out for the customer without having an ancillary thought of any other benefits. Something has really helped me. Empathy of all. And I do believe the famous line of Philip Portler, the marketing guru, the cardinal adage of sales is customers always right. But I just add one small bit at the end, which says the cardinal adage of sales is the customer is always right unless otherwise proven wrong. And that's where the empathy comes to picture. So I try and be from the customer standpoint at any given time, unless I do believe that the empathy needs to be driven two-sided. If my people are right, then my people are right. If the customer is right, the customer is right, full stop. So that is something that I've learned. I think I have gotten into a stage where I'm fairly black and white with regards to what is right and what is wrong. And if it is wrong, then I do call it out. Thumb rules. I always tell people who work with me, whom I work for, or the people who report to me, there are only two things that a person needs to know. And I genuinely believe this. The biggest learning that you can ever have as a salesperson, as a sales personnel, is knowing when to disqualify a lead. It just doesn't run in sales. It runs pretty much in all facets of life. You need to know when to disqualify something. And if you have understood that, I think you've got places to go. That is first. Second is, and I think I'm referring to the previous line that I'm quoting, no matter what you do in the world, even if you were to stand upside down to prove that you have the customer's best interest, you cannot sell unless the customer has a need, which he vocally tells you, or you find it out and you inform the customer that you have an issue that you don't know of. And if somebody was to come to me and tell me that, customer never really had a need, but I was still able to place something, the person, that's not going to go long. And I'm sure of late you've been hearing companies who are doing false selling. I don't want to quote their names. it eventually falls flat. It
Right.
really, really does. You can't go far. So if these two things are taken care of in terms of thumb rule, added with a bit of empathy from both sides, customers as well as the resources, I think you're fairly good. These are the thumb rules that I always believe.
I think it's sort of an interwoven, these are all fabrics interwoven together as a complete blanket, learning how to disqualify something, not just in sales, but also in life, and combining it with empathy. I think that's a very beautiful way of putting things forward. That's actually quite amazing. So quickly wrapping up with you, as a leader, as someone who's been in the industry, in the sales vertical for over 2 decades now, any specific traits that you look for when you are looking for teammates, when you're looking to hire for your team?
Okay, so I must come clean to you. So one of the benefits of being a sales personnel is the sales team is rather lean, specifically in our context in the services industry. We have a relatively leaner team as opposed to the delivery teams, the technology team. So with the little experience that I have, all that I can tell you is, do you understand the concept of mind of a volunteer? Yeah. It's difficult to identify that over a quick 15 or 20 minutes interview, or even let's say a couple of hours worth of a proposal or a strategy exercise that you do. But what I try and find out is what sort of a volunteering mind the person has. When I say volunteering mind, as I'm sure you may have heard this, there is nothing stronger than a volunteer's mind, because a volunteer's mind is nothing but a perfect congress of zeal, enthusiasm, passion, and at the same time, hunger. If you could have all of these put together, and the remaining two stuff or remaining two attributes like empathy or compassion, if I was to inherit that in that person, that is what I look. So need not necessarily that at the age of 20 or 22, when you're just getting your master's done from a premier institute and you're coming out for an interview, you would have a lot of compassion. And even if you do, how are you going to portray that over an interview, right?
Right.
So these are two skills that are arbitrary. You probably would not be able to assess it out. But what I absolutely assess out, the way the person speaks in terms of how enthusiastic he is, the kind of mind that he has, volunteering activities, or just volunteering thought. Helping a CSR activity probably may not be a bigger deal with somebody, but for me, it may be a really big deal. So that is something that I do try and find out. Secondly, receptiveness. You need to have a lot of reception inside you, introspect, retrospect, that you have to do. And again, this may not come out within a 15 to 20 minutes interview, but yes, if you were to provide hearty feedback and a legit feedback, if the person is able to take it, I do believe that is an important thing. Third thing is, and this is something that we can really identify during the interview, is preparedness. I think this is something that I value quite a bit, because every single time that I am meeting a customer, be it 8 a.m. in the morning or 5 p.m. in the evening, you have to be prepared as to whom you're meeting, which is what again brings me to the previous point of you need to know the customer. You need to know customer being the personnel or being the company. Same way, you need to know the interviewer. Say if the person has really done some, if not a lot, but at least some homework on who I am, or what have I done over the last years, probably would be able to strike up a conversation which may last a few minutes more than somebody who has not, who only restricts his answers to my questions. So preparedness. If I have the liberty of selecting people who are already in-house and not really an interview, then I think over the course of time, the enthusiasm probably would be the trait. Because I may not be able to judge that person with regards to preparedness immediately, because the person may be reporting to somebody else's team or whatever. But I think enthusiasm would really take me into their strides. But an interview, as I said, three things: reception, preparedness, as well as the first point that I actually spoke about, which is mind of a volunteer.
These are some very interesting insights that are not really often talked about, because normally when you talk about interviews, it's mostly about number games, how convincing you can be. But the idea of how convinced you are yourself as an individual to move forward, I think that's something that not a lot of people talk about. So thank you so much for pointing that out. And overall, it's been an amazing chat with you, Harichandra. Thank you so much for taking out the time to joining us today. And we're so glad that we could host you for this particular episode.
Tanya, the pleasure has been absolutely mine. Thank you so much for conducting this. Thank you so much for keeping me informed about the overall whereabouts. I'm sorry about the rescheduling, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.